Hello, and welcome back to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Now, if this isn't your first time to the channel, welcome back. For those of you who are, welcome to this channel in general. And for those of you who know what's up, you probably know the drill by now. Today we're tackling the point-to-point races in Ronnie, Blacklist number three's tier of challenges. And as simplistic as that sounds, it is, well, one of 12 races. At the point I'm at, the last 25%-ish of the game fall within the bounds of the last three of the challengers, the last three blacklist racers. And to a degree, I like that about this. It means that up to this point, everything has been leading you to this. Everything has built up to actually challenge Ronnie. Actually, oh no, nope. Um, for those using this as background noise, I just flipped the car in the middle of the prison. Um, but the thing is that this game takes the idea of your rival, your primary challenger in Razor, very seriously. The two that were most heavily involved in Racer taking your car in the beginning of the game and more or less causing you to become a domestic terrorist, um, were Ronnie and Bull. They were effectively his backup, the ones who determined whether or not you were worthy of racing Razor. And I kind of like that mentality. I kind of find it funny that these two more or less rose to the ranks because of Razor in general. Now, Razor, I think, would have been able to make it a fair bit of the way up the blacklist, probably beating Jules without stealing your car. He had himself a beautiful black Mustang, flame vinyls on the side, and it was comparable in power to that of either Jules or even the Porsche 911 Turbo by, I believe it was Baron. Knowing that, he definitely could have made a name for himself without stealing the BMW. And I feel like if he didn't cheat to get it, there wouldn't be as much of an issue. Ronnie has an Aston Martin DB9 and has had it more or less since the very beginning of the game, because you get to play against it in the prologue. I just went through a wall. Perfect. The prologue sees both Ronnie and Bull use their current vehicles, a Aston Martin DB9 and a Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren, respectively, which tells me that both of them had near optimal circumstances or situations to reach the top of the blacklist, and yet didn't. Why? My guesstimation is that the majority of the current blacklist, the one that we face off against, were there because of Razor. Now, some of them, like Earl or Vic, probably have been around for a while. But but it seems like there was a large number that had joined after the fact, after being defeated by Razor. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but Razor is a very controlling individual, and he is sowing the seeds of corruption throughout the entire racing league or street racing system within Rockport. It makes sense that as a character he would try to do whatever means necessary to maintain his hold of his current position, his current power. Now, I think that makes him a good villain. Good person? No, far from it. But a good villain doesn't have to be a good person or a broken hero. They can be greedy or power hungry because that's what they are, that's who they are. And I feel like a lot of the time, especially in gaming, people lose sight of the fact that a villain can be just evil or mean for the sake of being a villain, or instead of, oh, my character was, lost at a young age, is dealing with grief after the loss of their sibling or something. There's always something. And Razor doesn't have that. He doesn't need that. He was power hungry. He saw a car that could beat him. He wanted it. And he did what he felt was necessary to get it. Short, sweet, to the point. Now, admittedly, given the setup of the entire Blacklist, including Corvettes, Dodge Vipers, SLR McLarens, we have we have a Mustang in there, a Eclipse. All these cars that are far more sporty are getting taken down by little old Lexus. And I think that's kind of humorous, if anything. Something like this wouldn't be possible in the future game of Need for Speed Carbon, because the vehicles in Carbon top out far sooner in the lower tier cars than they do in the higher tiers. So getting in a Heat 5 pursuit with a Chevy Camaro is next to impossible to get out of. Not not totally impossible, but unless you really get lucky and know where you're going, it's a it's pretty darn hard to get out of one once you get started. Now, the reason I like to kind of poke at that is because a lot of the things that Need for Speed Underground, Underground 2, and Most Wanted did set the groundwork for this franchise in a way that I don't think we all acknowledged the way I personally would like to see them acknowledged. Need for Speed Underground brought in the, shall we say, the tuner scene, the street racing scene, something that up to that point in time was not very commonly shown. And it had more customization than any other Need for Speed or racing game up to that point. And then you turn around and, okay, now what's next? Need for Speed Underground 2. More cars, more customization, but now they've added a free roam element. They have the ability for you to drive across the city because why not? Have fun with it, enjoy. What else do you want? You get to turn the entire city into your playground. And Need for Speed Underground does that in such a way that makes the world of Underground 2 makes me want to explore it. Need for Speed Most Wanted said, yeah, I liked what those other two guys did, but what if we added more storyline elements? Now, don't get me wrong, there is a story to Underground and Underground 2, but it's not as fleshed out as Most Wanted was. A new guy coming to town, trying his hands at some new races after entering or leaving Atlantica. I'm assuming, anyways, that's what happens. And you end up here, of all places, Rockport. You find yourself in the midst of an underground racing ring, shall we say, and that's kind of the point. You end up where you're really not supposed to be. When you actually get going in this underground racing league, you face off against Razor. Razor's pompous, he's strong-willed, he knows what he wants and he knows how to get it. That's the mentality. If you're going to be the best, you got to start somewhere. So you're going to challenge him, take him on. To do that, you got to take out his friends. So you beat Ronnie, you beat Bull, you meet up with a couple other guys like Raj and Mia. Things are going pretty good. And then, what happens? Your car breaks down in the middle of a race against a guy? What do you mean your car broke down? An oil slick left at the starting line. Something as simplistic as an oil slick. You're a professional racer. You wouldn't let your car have that kind of an issue in the start of a major race, would you? And so it sows the distrust of Razor right off the bat. It doesn't help that he then turns around and uses your vehicle to become the most notorious racer in the city. Now you got to chase him down, and the only way you know how, racing. Flush him out of cover. Make sure he knows that you're gunning for him. You're going to do whatever it takes to get to him. And you do. For lack of better terms, you chase him down, beat him, and congratulations, it was all set up from the very beginning. He stole your car. He broke the rules of the racing league to get your car. And so, is what you do really unjustified? I'm of the mindset that the primary character, your guy, is not immoral for doing what they're doing. But definitely could have gone about it in a different way. The thing is that if you've watched this series up to this point, you know I make a lot of references to the Fast and Furious franchise. Razor's a pretty darn fast guy. The only way you're catching him is if you catch him when he ain't in the vehicle. As soon as he's in the car, he's gone. And that's just the reality of it. So, I believe in a way that this situation of trying to use the more, shall we say, legal means wouldn't work. The question is, how many people has Razor done this to get to the top? And how many people is he doing it to stay there? This isn't necessarily a question of moral. It's not a argument of who's right, who's wrong. You're both wrong. Street racing is illegal. And if I'm being honest, if your guy says, "Hey, by the way, I was street racing and my car broke down and that's why I lost," he'd be thrown in jail and then nuff snuff, right? There's nothing to save, nothing to fight for at that point. So, in my understanding, my acknowledgement of this is that your character is going to be fairly vigilante-esque in nature, just by virtue of what it is he's actually trying to do. And that's kind of disappointing in one way and realistic in another. You're not expecting somebody on a revenge quest to be going about it in the most moral of means. Anywho, enough about morality. We're here for racing. We're here to deal with the police. And get the heck out of here, right? Now, I've kind of been poking at this car for a while. I've said on numerous occasions that it's surprised me in more than one way at just how efficient and how capable it is, in spite of my preconceived notions. My understanding of the car was it wasn't going to do it. It wasn't going to be able to make the cut. It wasn't going to be able to do what it's doing. That at the end of it all, I would fail. And the reality is, at this point, it's gotten to a point that this car, I believe, can do it. I've thought so for a while, but I didn't expect that it would come out of this with flying colors in many areas. I expected that it was going to be going through this, kicking and screaming, waiting for a lucky break. And while sure, there are some races that I'm still going through kicking and screaming, waiting for a lucky break, like the, the drag races. A lot of it I end up actually going into with the mentality of, let's see what happens. Because about 60% of all races that I'm getting involved in are a first try victory. The ones that aren't are usually like, 7 to 10 attempts. But the ones that I actually do 100% first try victory each race shows that this isn't as far outclassed as I would have expected, and that the races that I struggle with aren't a vehicle problem, it's a me problem. And that, well, a little bit of an ego problem there, but be that as it may, it's still reasonable. It's learning from the situation that I'm dealing with. And I'm okay with that. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Will it ever be? Absolutely not. So, I got thinking a little bit recently about how the franchise has evolved. Which games made it feel like it was stepping forward and which ones it stepped backward. And I'll be honest, some of these tracks really feel like it stepped backward. Some games, I should say. If you look at Need for Speed Most Wanted compared to Carbon, Carbon defined a lot about the later vehicle tier systems. And then we get into Need for Speed Pro Street. Pro Street was, how you say, I feel like it was well thought of and well put together. But if you peel back the layers a little bit, it struggles to achieve its goal in a concise manner. Now, note that I didn't have the best of versions of the game, but regardless of that fact, I was still playing the game consistently and trying to learn how best to play it. And a few things come up. First of all, the Need for Speed Pro Street has a issue with or it has better AI. That's what I'm going to start with. It has better AI that follow the tracks to a T. It follows the recommendations. They don't make massive mistakes. But they also mean that, or that issue, that they're good AI, means that for a large part of it, they really struggle in in terms of actually being able to beat you once you get a vehicle strong enough to handle them. An example of that comes in the form of, um, well, the speed races. So in Pro Street, they have the speed challenge races, which are effectively just sprint races, let's be honest. The entire point of it is they have a massive stretch of highway that you as the player have all free reign in the world to go on. But this massive stretch of highway has all of zero room for error. If you mess up, you're done. So it's all about learning how to control your car at high speeds. There was one, the final one before challenging the Speed King, that I used to play over and over and over again. The reason was because it was really good for getting money and I like trying out different cars. So I would challenge it constantly. But if your vehicle was fast enough to beat JP Laurent, yes, I know JP and I don't remember the Speed King's name. If your car was fast enough to challenge him, then you were golden for challenging the Speed King. But what also ties into that is that this race, once you had a car good enough to handle JP and the Pagani Zonda, there was really nothing the game could throw at you speed-wise that would challenge you anymore. And I believe that's kind of the crux of the issue. Once you got there, you were there. You're done. There was nothing more the game could give you. in that particular aspect. In Need for Speed Most Wanted and Underground, Need for Speed Carbon, the AI is weaker. And that means that, in part, they had to find ways to buff it. So a lot of the time, I find that the racers in Need for Speed Most Wanted and Pro Street are Most Wanted and Carbon are faster than the player car. But they end up getting into small accidents and making small oversights in their turns and whatnot that makes it so that they struggle to actually keep up with a human player. It's a nitpick, but it's a nitpick I notice more in more recent games, is that the newer the game gets, the easier it is to poke out flaws in the game's AI, because the AI is coded better than what it would be coded 20 years ago. Nitpicky? Absolutely. My opinion? Also absolutely. Let me know what you think, because I could be looking at this the wrong way. I haven't played much for what I'll call modern racing games at this point. And that's kind of where I'm basing a lot of this out of, is these more modern racing games that I see people online absolutely flaunt constantly. So it makes me question just how much the games have improved or changed over the last 20 years. Anywho, now that I've had my little rant, we're 20 minutes into the video, and we've got one and a bit of a race left. What's left of this is pretty much all she gets. And the final race of this section, which is, I believe, the last of the sprint races. Overall, I'm pretty confident with how things have gone. This section wasn't as bad as I had anticipated. And knowing that, though, once I get the final upgrade, there's really nothing that the game is going to be able to throw at me that I won't be able to throw back and say, my turn. Now, if you are a stickler for that kind of thing, I apologize. But this car is as strong as it will ever get at the beginning of the Tier 2 Bull. Or reverse tier. Tier 14? Tier 14 Bull. Bull is going to be a entirely different ballgame. But we'll get there when we get there. These guys, however, they're just not doing it for me. It's a crying shame because they have so much potential. Oh well. Now, if you've been watching this series and have actually watched this video to the end, first of all, congratulations, you're one of very few. Secondly, if there is something you're interested in watching, if you're interested in me making content that ties into that, please, by all means, I'd love a request. I love to see how the different games function. And I would love to try something a little bit more out there, shall we say. Oh, yep, I'm playing against an AI, I can be mean. Because, I'll be honest, I've stuck to, admittedly, older games, for the most part, because older games tend to have more of a nostalgia factor. I myself am nearing 30. And I'm somebody that grew up with these. And a lot of people lost access to them a long time ago. I was a bit of a collector, and so I got into it. I continue to collect to this day. There are games I still have in the wrapping. So, if there's something you're curious about that I might still have on hand, I'd love to give it a shot. Who knows what who knows what lies around the next bend? Okay, really? Anywho, with all that said and done, I'm Novaria signing off. If you like what you see, drop a like, leave a comment down below, and we'll catch you next time. Until then, be good to one another, and have a good one.